Hi, I'm Rachel, and as I sit here staring at the shredded remains of my family albums, I can't stop replaying Linda's Oscar-worthy performance this morning. "Oh, Dieter, your cat must have done this," she gasped, with an innocence so forced it was almost laughable. "Never mind that I don't own a cat." The smirk she exchanged with Emily, my sister-in-law, told me everything I needed to know. I should have seen this coming. From the moment I married David 5 years ago, Linda and Emily made it clear I was an outsider. Their bond was unbreakable, their family a fortress, and I was just the intruder who dared to step inside. But destroying my childhood photos, even for them, this was a new level of cruelty. It all began 3 weeks ago when David and I announced at Sunday dinner that we were expecting our first child. His face lit up with pure joy as he hugged me close and proudly declared, "I'm going to be a father." I glanced around, hoping to see at least a flicker of happiness from his family. Instead, Linda dabbed her lips with a napkin and said in the most clinical tone imaginable, "Well, I suppose we'll need to start making room for baby things." "Emily, didn't you say you needed storage for your old photos? Rachel's little collection in the spare room could be moved to the basement." Her words hit me like a slap. My little collection was 3 meticulously preserved albums of irreplaceable family photos, the only pieces of my parents I had left after losing them in a car accident at 16. David, knowing how much they meant to me, immediately stepped in. "Mom, those photos aren't going anywhere," he said firmly. "The baby's room will be in the office." Linda smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "Of course, dear. I was only trying to help." Emily, however, couldn't resist twisting the knife. "It's just that some of those photos look so dated. Wouldn't it be nice to make room for new memories?" David's grip on my hand tightened under the table, his silent promise that he had my back. But I knew this wasn't over. Over the next 2 weeks, their jabs became relentless, cloaked in helpful suggestions about decluttering before the baby arrived. Emily would casually bring up stories of women who started fresh by getting rid of old keepsakes. Linda would wax poetic about the sacrifices she'd made as a mother, her pointed glances leaving no doubt about what she thought I should do. Then came their offer to help yesterday while David was away on a business trip. I hesitated, but David urged me to give them a chance. "They're trying, Rachel," he said. "Maybe this baby will bring everyone closer." I should have trusted my gut. This morning, I walked into the spare room and found Linda standing over the shredded remnants of my albums. Photos of my parents' wedding, my childhood birthdays, our last family vacation, all destroyed. Emily stood behind her, hand pressed to her mouth in a theatrical display of horror. "The cat must have done this," Linda said, her voice dripping with fox sympathy. She knew full well I didn't have a cat. "Maybe it's a sign, dear, that it's time to let go of the past and focus on the future." My breath caught as tears blurred my vision. Emily slipped her phone back into her pocket, her smirk barely concealed. She had probably been recording my reaction for her own twisted amusement. "I'll help you clean this up," Linda offered, already reaching for the trash bin. "Don't touch them." My voice was low, shaking, but it stopped her cold. "Don't you dare touch what's left of my family." "Now, Rachel," Emily interjected, her tone syrupy sweet. "There's no need to get emotional. It's not good for the baby." Ignoring her, I pulled out my phone and dialed David. My hands trembled as the line rang, but I refused to look away from Linda's face. For the first time, her smug expression faltered. What they didn't know was that I had installed a small security camera in the spare room after noticing some of the photos had been moved. I hadn't even told David about it, hoping I was just imagining things. But now, as I stared down the women who had crossed every line, I knew that camera held the truth. Linda and Emily exchanged nervous glances, their confidence beginning to crack. They must have realized that this time they'd gone too far. David's voice came through the phone, sharp with concern. "Rachel? What's wrong? You never call during my meetings." "David, you need to come home." My voice cracked, the weight of everything crashing down on me. "Your mother and Emily, they destroyed all my family photos." "They what?" His disbelief was palpable, followed by an edge of anger. Before I could say another word, Linda snatched the phone from my hand. "David, sweetie, it's a misunderstanding," she said, her voice dripping with saccharine innocence. "The cat got into Rachel's old photos, and she's understandably upset. You know how emotional pregnant women can be." "What cat?" David's voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "We don't have a cat, Mom." Emily, ever the opportunist, leaned in toward the phone. "Maybe it was a stray. The window was probably left open again. Rachel does that sometimes. Remember when it rang on your work papers?" "Stop lying," I said, my voice steady now as I snatched the phone back. "David, I have it all on video. I installed the security camera in the spare room last week." For a moment, the color drained from Linda's face. Emily's smug grin vanished like a flipped switch. "Send me the footage," David said firmly. I could hear him moving, the rustle of papers and the slam of a door. "I'm coming home now." As I forwarded the video, Linda's facade cracked. "Rachel, let's not blow this out of proportion," she said, her tone turning patronizing. "We were only trying to help. Those photos were making you sad, and with the baby coming." "The baby?" I interrupted, my hand instinctively resting on my stomach. "You mean the baby who will never know their grandparents? The baby who now won't even have photos to see what they look like because of you?" Emily decided to try another tactic. "It's not like they were professional photos," she said, her voice breezy. "We can get new ones. Better ones. You know, with your real family." "Real family?" I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. My parents were real. Their love was real. What isn't real is this twisted idea of family you and Linda are so desperate to protect. Through the phone, I heard David's sharp intake of breath. He must have opened the video. In the footage, Linda could be seen pulling the albums from the shelf with methodical precision while Emily stood watch. They laughed, tore through pages, and made mocking comments about my parents as if they were discussing the weather. "Mom." "Emily." David's voice was dangerously calm. "What the hell were you thinking?" "We were thinking of you," Linda protested, her voice rising. "You need a wife who's focused on the future, not stuck in the past with some shrine to her dead parents." The silence that followed was deafening. "I'll be home in 20 minutes, David said finally, his words cutting like a blade. "Don't either of you leave. And Mom?" That shrine was all Rachel had left of her family, the family she lost when she was 16, the family you just destroyed. When he hung up, Linda and Emily huddled together, their whispering frantic. They hadn't counted on evidence. They hadn't counted on David taking my side. I knelt down and gently gathered the shredded pieces of my past. My mother's smile from my 5th birthday peeked out from one scrap. Another fragment showed my father's proud face at my high school graduation, just months before the accident that took them both. Every torn piece felt like another wound, but I refused to cry in front of them. "We can fix this," Emily blurted out suddenly, her voice too chipper. "We'll get you new albums. Designer ones. Maybe even recreate some of these photos with Photoshop." "Get out," I said quietly. "Now, Rachel," Linda began, but I cut her off, my voice rising. "Get out. If you're still here when David gets home, I'm calling the police. I'll report you both for vandalism and harassment." Their faces fell. They quickly gathered their things, Linda trying to salvage her dignity as she paused in the doorway. "You're making a mistake," she said coldly. "This family was perfect before you came along." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, Linda. This family was just better at hiding its cruelty." As their car pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed with a text from David. 5 minutes away. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I should have seen this coming. I should have protected you and your memories better." I looked down at the torn photos scattered around me, years of love and laughter reduced to scraps. But as I cradled my stomach, I made a silent vow to my unborn child. "You will know love. Real love. Not the kind that's twisted into control and cruelty and called family." David's car screeched into the driveway, and I heard the front door slam as he rushed inside. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time since I married into this family, I knew I wasn't alone. David had chosen me, chosen us, and together, we'd rebuild. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. David immediately canceled Sunday dinners and set firm boundaries with his mother and sister, making it crystal clear their behavior was unacceptable. But for me, the pain of losing those irreplaceable memories cut deeper than words could describe. It felt like losing my parents all over again. 3 days after the incident, an unexpected email landed in my inbox from Emily's teenage daughter, Katie. "Aunt Rachel, I'm so sorry for what Mom and Grandma did. I overheard them planning something last week, so I took pictures of your albums when I was over for dinner. I know it's not the same, but I thought it might help. My breath caught as I opened the attachments. Over 100 photos stared back at me, not perfect, but clear enough to recognize the precious memories they captured. Katie had painstakingly photographed nearly every page before Linda and Emily destroyed them. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the pictures, tears streaming down my face. David pulled me into his arms. "Katie's a good kid," he said softly. "Nothing like her mother." That evening, Linda and Emily arrived unannounced, carrying expensive photo albums and a letter of apology that was clearly scripted by a lawyer. What they didn't expect was to find David's father, Robert, already seated in our living room. "Dad?" Emily faltered, her confidence wavering. "What are you doing here?" Robert's expression was unreadable, but his voice was firm. "Dealing with something I should have handled a long time ago. Sit down. Both of you." Linda started her rehearsed speech, holding up one of the pristine albums. "We came to apologize and make things right. These new albums are meaningless." Robert interrupted, his tone sharp. "Just like this apology. I've watched you two mistreat Rachel for years, and I stood by, saying nothing. That ends tonight." David gave my hand a reassuring squeeze as Robert continued, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I've seen the footage," he said. "Not just of you destroying the photos, but of every cruel comment, every orchestrated accident, every calculated insult Rachel has endured. Did you really think no one noticed things going missing? Or that Rachel wouldn't document the truth?" Emily's face went ashen. "What are you talking about?" "The baby blanket Rachel's mother made before she passed. The one that mysteriously got bleach spilled on it last week. The recipe cards from her family that vanished. The jewelry from her parents that you accidentally misplaced. Rachel has been recording everything." Linda tried to interrupt, her voice wavering. "Robert, you're overreacting. We were only trying to." "To what?" Robert cut her off. "Erase her past. Control her future. Make my grandchild ashamed of where they come from." The room was so silent that I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, Robert turned to me, his expression softening. "Rachel," he said, handing me a small box. "I know this doesn't replace what you've lost, but I hope it brings some comfort." Inside the box was a delicate silver locket. "It was my mother's," Robert explained. "Inside is a photo of your parents. David showed me one years ago, and I made a copy, thinking someday I'd find the right moment to give this to you. That moment is now. You're more family to me than these two have been in years." Linda and Emily sat frozen as Robert laid out the consequences of their actions. "Linda," he said firmly, "I'm moving out until you commit to counseling. Emily, you're no longer welcome at family gatherings unless you can prove you've changed. And as for the family business, David will inherit it directly. I'm bypassing both of you." "But the business has always been controlled by the women in a family," Linda protested, her voice cracking. "And look what that power has done to you," Robert replied sagely. "You've become the very person my mother warned me to avoid, cruel, manipulative, and incapable of love." As they left, Emily turned back one last time. "Katie took pictures of those albums, you know. She betrayed us to help you. I hope you're proud." I touched the locket around my neck, feeling its cool weight. "No, Emily," I said. "Katie showed true family loyalty by standing up for what's right. She's welcome here anytime." 6 months later, our daughter was born. We named her Hope. The first photo in her baby album was of her wrapped in the blanket my mother had made, lovingly restored after its deliberate damage. Katie became a regular presence in our home, her laughter and kindness a balm for the wounds Linda and Emily had inflicted. Linda and Emily began attending counseling, though whether real change would come remained to be seen. For now, I focused on the love and joy in our growing family. As I rocked Hope to sleep one evening, the silver locket caught the light. Inside, my parents smiled back at me, their faces preserved by someone who truly understood the meaning of family. I learned that family isn't about shared blood or Sunday dinners. It's about love that builds rather than destroys, truth that heals rather than hurts, and the courage to stand against cruelty, even when it comes from those closest to you.